When, how, and where do you fit? The future of healthcare is becoming a reality. A world where data and technology drive newer care. Better care. Care that is more human. This future is within touching distance. But are we ready for it? Because empowering care teams and patients to better manage and prevent disease requires not just products, but new services that can be delivered anytime, anywhere. To achieve these better outcomes, to grow in this future, organizations must adapt their operating models to meet the demand for convenient, customized, and connected care. Take any waiting room in any hospital, like this one. After months of frequent abdominal pain, Alicia waits for a colonoscopy. After her hip operation, Joan sees the doctor to discuss her painful recovery. And after 3 recent asthma attacks, Jack needs a new prescription. Today, these people have good reasons to be here, but in the future, none of them need to be here at all. As their current health journeys are transformed by advances from the future, consider what changes you must make to thrive in this changing ecosystem. The number of younger patients with colon cancer is increasing. Alicia doesn't know it yet, but by the time she gets the colonoscopy that identifies her tumor, her diagnosis could be more serious. Currently, she experiences painful symptoms, but she either fails to follow them up or she postpones her doctor's visits. In the future, how can Alicia's diagnosis and treatment be easier, more intuitive, and less invasive? Sooner than expected, implanted nanobots will sequence emerging cancer cells, detecting her illness before symptoms occur and alerting her. Based on the results, Alicia's care team will prescribe a personalized drug to treat or even cure the cancer. The scale of this information transfer will reroute the healthcare experience. Without these new technologies, Alicia could spend weeks waiting for a treatment that has a lower probability of success and is imprecise. In the future, that precious time between diagnosis and starting therapy will be next to nothing. Artificial intelligence will use the data transmitted by the nanobots to develop a custom prescription that effectively targets her tumor with the fewest side effects. While her cancer is being treated, Alicia will live and work normally, confident about the benefits of her treatment. She will be empowered by her care. For many asthma patients and their doctors, it's challenging to know when symptoms will get worse. How can organizations help? Jack doesn't consider that he is likely to have an attack today, but a series of events will unfold that could mean an emergency trip to the hospital. Even though he feels great now, he should take a puff on his inhaler before leaving home. What if the right data and services worked with the inhaler to prompt Jack to be more proactive? In the future, ambient sensors in Jack's home, plus a smart patch that monitors his breathing activity, will alert Jack when he needs to reduce the risk of an attack. This seems minor, but it could be an important nudge, helping Jack stay on his medicine, keeping him healthy, and giving his dad peace of mind. But behavioral changes alone won't fully eliminate Jack's asthma risk. Today, the odds are stacked against him. The day's pollen, pollution, and cool air mean that without immediate intervention, there is an 80% chance he will have an attack at school. But solutions are on the horizon that will help. A bioelectronic device will monitor the inflammation of his airway and emit energy pulses to reduce it, drastically reducing Jack's risk of an attack. Meeting with her care team to discuss her upcoming hip implant surgery, Joan is unaware that she will suffer post-operative pain because of the implant. What if she had both a better implant and better rehab services after surgery? One day, a novel implant will be printed from Joan's cells. It will precisely replicate her original hip, meaning there is less wear and tear on the implant and less pain for Joan. Sensors in the implant will measure how the hip functions and Joan's movements to help optimize her care. These insights will help Joan stay active, improving her physical and mental health. But the new implant is just one piece of Joan's return to full health. A one-size-fits-all approach to physical therapy can cause further injury or frustration and anxiety about the pace of recovery. What if Joan were offered a tailored service designed to keep her motivated during her recovery? What if an AI-based physical therapy program synced with Joan's implant and used the real-time data to coach her to perform the exercises correctly? The AI charts her progress and uses incentives that encourage her to keep training. These solutions have the potential to transform patients' lives. Smart devices that continuously stream data will provide a new level of care personalization. Smart therapies that join genetic and sensor data with lifestyle advice will be safer and more effective. Smart systems that monitor symptoms and adjust care in real time will allow clinicians to care for people in non-medical settings. These solutions will make it easier for patients to stay on medicines and maximize health. Leaders in this new world will invest in new skills that make them hyper-connected and human-centered. They must ask and answer these key questions. How will you use technology to make healthcare more human? How will your operating model adapt to deliver products and services anywhere and at any time that they are needed? Who will you partner with to access the data you don't own but need? How will collaborations work in an interconnected ecosystem? How will you bridge trust gaps and build mutual value together? When will you be able to give others the confidence that your practices are sustainable and generate long-term value? And ultimately, when the human body is the biggest data platform, how will you create value?
Thank you so much. So this was the vision of Ernst & Young, you know the company, Ernst & Young, yes. So this is kind of one of the major consulting companies. And this was their vision of the future of healthcare. I think it's very impressive. It is, however, focused like specifically on AI, on data, and all the devices around the patient, or actually not patient any longer, right? So it's about people who are still not sick. So it's more about prevention, more about personalization, and other things which we'll be discussing today. So today we're now final set of lectures, couple of lectures, and they will talk about nuclear medicine. Have you heard of nuclear medicine? Oh, you probably heard, right? Nuclear medicine. Why it's nuclear? Yeah. Yeah, because they are using atoms. Yeah, atoms and some molecules. Anyway, nuclear. They know why it's nuclear medicine. Okay, and then we'll talk about telehealth and digital. And digital, by the way, this was part of this film. So in this film we primarily saw telehealth and nutraceuticals, which is otherwise called behavioral medicine. You saw that they kind of were trying to change the behaviors of people, and through that get better health. And can we switch the next slide, please? Or shall I? Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So the interesting thing is that we have here the list of the major trends which were supported by the venture community, and somehow today we'll be talking about radiotherapy, nuclear medicine, and you see it's not here, it's not listed here. So it is not a trend actually. This is something which is currently appreciated. You still have to know what it is because this is part of the life sciences overall picture. And I think that this is currently underappreciated, but this may change. And that's why you have to look into this, whatever, MRIs and many other things. Because this, somehow the wave can come into that space. Some strong and exciting innovation may come to this space, and we have to be ready. And then the digital health is not part of that. Yeah, just because it's kind of digital health generally is normally um, considered a very different segment of life sciences space. So life sciences primarily dealing with biopharma, with therapies, medical devices, diagnostics, and less so about the medical services. And digital health is primarily about like providing services. So it's not in here. So today we're talking about two topics which are not actually listed in the largest trends. Anyway, yeah. So a bit about nuclear medicine, what it is. So you talk about atoms, and we start with atoms today. So what are atoms? Atoms are the building blocks of whatever molecules and everything. We have neutrons and protons here in the nucleus, right? And then electrons around that. So just to give an example, this is iodine. Iodine is the element with number 53, which means that it has 53 protons in, yeah, just 53 protons. By the number of protons, we have this number in our here, in the middle left table, periodic table. So here, if we look at this iodine, we have isotopes. And do you know what isotopes are? What are these isotopes? Isotopes. Yeah, from the school theory, right? Well, so actually the same element, yes, the same element, with a different number of neutrons. And neutrons, neutrons normally doesn't give much, so you have this electrons and protons, and then they have to be ideally same number. And then this neutrons figure, you can actually add to the atomic mass of the element of the atom, and by adding number of neutrons. So you can add 70, 72, 78, and some of these isotopes with different number of neutrons would be stable, and they're stable. And then some of them will be not stable, which means they will decay and will change to something different, to a different element or a different isotope, which would be stable. So and radioisotope means that this particular isotope is not only unstable, but also that it emits energy when decaying. So, and half-life, the half-life kind of characteristics of isotope, of radioisotope, means that it's a period of time when the isotope is emitting energy. So that's why half-life is very important. So it means that this is kind of a period when the isotope is radioactive, right? Okay, so this is the isotopes. Radioisotopes are those which are unstable and emit energy. And then They can emit energy. These radioisotopes may emit energy. Like there are many like types. Could be alpha, beta, and gamma, and X-rays, and some kind of. So there are different types of energy. The way the element is decaying, the way the radioisotope is decaying. Um, and these different um, types of energy and emission uh, and radiation actually can have different ways how you can apply this in the medicine. Of course, this isotope sphere of radioisotopes are used not only in the medicines but also in agriculture to clean up the products. So some of the products are being cleaned up, and radiation is being used for that. Not everybody knows that. Also, when you talk about selection, we talked about CRISPR, like editing specific genes, adding potentially new genes, and this is called GMO products. And this is kind of something which is unfortunately unacceptable to some of the people like within society. But then for kind of traditional selection, sometimes you do use radiation actually. So which kind of, if you tell the same people who are against GMO product, they will say, no, don't, the radiation is bad, and please don't use it on the products. Anyway, but I'll talk today about just about the medicine. Um, so yeah, so radioactive isotopes could actually be found in the nature, and then there are many isotopes, many radioisotopes. So the way they are primarily produced, there are actually two ways how you can produce radioisotopes. These are either through in a reactor, and reactor uses urine as raw material, and then by kind of bombardment of this urine U-235 with neutrons, it forms a lot of like over 400 different radioisotopes, and then these isotopes are being cleared, and then specific isotopes are chosen, and this is here on the left hand side. It actually shows the process of production of the most used radiopharmaceutical, which is uh, molybdenum 99, and then out of this molybdenum 99, technetium 99 is being produced. And technetium is used like in 2/3 of all the operations in the medicine. So technetium is number one radioisotope being used in medicine. And again, 2/3, because there are, like, I would say, tens of radioisotopes being used, and technetium is number one by far. Technetium is used for imaging, and we'll talk about that later. And then, so this is the reactor way of producing radioisotopes, coming from some raw materials, then cleaning, and then the issue with that is that the reactor may melt down, so it's kind of risky because this reaction is kind of potentially may fall out of control. Whatever, currently, of course, those who are dealing with that, they would claim that reactors are actually quite safe, and probably even safer than some other source of energy, whatever. Anyway, the problem is that the molybdenum has 66 days of half-life. So within the 66 days, you have to use it. So what they do, they essentially put this into generators, small like generators, which is being then transferred to specific clinics, and then professionals call it milking. So you open up, and molybdenum is changed into technetium, and then technetium 99 has half-life of around 6 hours. So you have to really apply this straight to the patient. So whenever somebody needs an imaging procedure, they would call a doctor, they would order or kind of reserve a dose of technetium and come to a clinic and get this dose. This is very tough logistically. Of course, you have all the licenses, they have all these kind of specific like delivery chains for that. So this is kind of really complicated. And then the other is the cyclotrons or accelerators, which could be placed directly into clinics, and they can produce radioisotopes out of stable atoms. They can produce radioactive isotopes just in the clinics. So this is normally much safer, cheaper, no logistics involved. So you need it, you get it, almost, and you're dealing here with stable atoms initially, right? And then so it's kind of safe, and then it is has much less waste, because the here this kind of all of these kind of isotopes are being produced as a kind of a side product. So it's not actually, normally it's like they produce energy, and side products are these radioisotopes, and there's a lot of waste involved here and almost no waste here. So, and currently like there are like movements to switch all the production to the cyclotrons because it's more ecological, and potentially there are, well, not potentially, but there are even ways to produce technetium-99 already just using cyclotron, not using reactor. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, for some time there was this particular kind of differentiation. So there were specific radioisotopes which you can only produce in a reactor, and they were specific which you can only do in a cyclotron. And this cyclotron has the characteristic of the energy. And for some isotopes you need more energy, so you need a larger cyclotron, whatever. Okay, now how they are being applied. We'll start with imaging. Primarily, these were used for imaging. And here is like a difference between X-ray, MRI, CT, and PET, and then SPECT. So there are many ways how you can scan the human body. The X-ray was the first one, and it shows the difference between the bone and soft tissue. So you can have kind of detect some bone fractures, some issues with the bones. Computed tomography, CT. Firstly, it's a very quick test, and it shows its use on the brain, and it shows the bleed, the stroke, and it's normally it's a fixed picture showing the kind of potentially large bleeding inside the human body. For that, you have and for most, probably for all of them, except for X-ray, you have to take in a tracer molecule, which would emit some radiation, which you can actually then detect, and then based on like detecting this emission of the tracer, which you're like swallowing, for example, or injecting into your veins, you can, like, by detecting the emission, you can actually get these nice pictures. Okay, so computed tomography is being used for larger bleed and stroke and whatever. MRI, magnetic resonance imaging. This test is much longer, shows more specific of the more detail of the human brain, and it is used for like smaller kind of bleeds, stroke, whatever. There's also MRA, but MRA is primarily for the brain, or magnetic resonance angiography. Angiography, like angio means like blood and whatever, blood vessels. So here with MRA, this one shows the flood of blood in the system and in the brain. So if there's like some issues with that, you will see that on this picture. So you see here all these blood like vessels, right? The PET is potentially here probably one of the most interesting. So PET, what PET shows shows the activity within the body. So, for example, if you swallow sugars, then you will see the activity at the cellular level when the sugar is being digested. And because cancer is uncontrolled growth of cells and division of cells, it requires a lot of sugar. So with PET, if you're swallowing sugar plus like radiopharmaceutical agent, imaging agent, which would emit something, so you can in the PET scan you can see where this sugar is being digested, and probably if you see at some place that there's like much larger and much larger digestion of sugar, and then the image becomes lighter here where there's more digestion. It means that that potentially this is a tumor, right? Especially if there's a very major like difference between the colors um, and how light is this part. So yeah. So and then the SPECT, the last one is SPECT. SPECT is actually much cheaper than PET, more available, but the resolution is much less detailed, and it's like 1 centimeter, which is like just 1 centimeter, right? So this being used for like for monitoring heart and seeing if there's some stress here, if it actually has some issues with the blood flow within the heart. So this is kind of readily available. I wouldn't say that that it has like really broad spectrum application. So this is about imaging. So first, the radiopharma is being used as imaging agent, which normally is combined with some pharmaceutical, some molecule, which is better absorbed by some organ or by cancer cells like versus the normal cells. So with that, you can see that there's some consolidation at some place and there's some issue, and you can visualize an organ or you can visualize cancer tumor. Okay, so this is the imaging part. Here, the next like few slides is just the list of radioisotopes which are being used in generally in the medicine. It's a great list. I would say that it's actually hard to find the kind of I would say systematic summary of all the isotopes available. So I found it, and here's the link. Anyway, maybe you don't need to remember all of those, but if you would be dealing with radiopharmaceuticals, you would actually, you will learn them by heart. And some of those I actually, anyway, marked up. These are more important, and this probably something, some names you should know. So molybdenum, which is 99, molybdenum, which is used then within a generator then to produce this technetium 99. Iodine is used diagnostically for liver, for others, and others. I must admit I have never actually met in real life. I mean, in real projects. But this one, which I actually marked up, yes, these are like the technetium is actually, as I said, like 2/3 of all the operations. So this is number one radioisotope. And these are all isotopes which are being produced in a reactor, right? Next one is the cyclotron radioisotopes, which are being used again for imaging. So for PET imaging, primarily this fluorine 18 is being used, but also you see here for example, iodine 123. It is being used for thyroid function detection because thyroid absorbs iodine, and it actually produces and absorbs iodine a lot. So if you would try to monitor iodine in thyroid, you would not see that. But if you use this element, iodine, whatever, like a different isotope, which emits energy, here it emits gamma radiation. This you can actually track, and then you can see the kind of the visualization of the organ. So, and you can see if there's any issues with that, potentially identify tumors and everything. So, yeah, okay. So these are radioisotopes for imaging, and then there are isotopes, also cyclotron isotopes for diagnostics and potentially for therapies. Here I just marked up two isotopes which are used for brachytherapy. Brachytherapy is when you put an implant, and I will show you the picture. When you put an implant which is emitting energy, and which would for quite some time, for a long time, like for example for 60 days, you can apply that. For 60 days within a human body, there will be an emitter which would be killing tumor cells within the body, very much localized, so that you don't have to go to this like radiotherapy like every other day, but then you just have an implant which very much locally emits radiation and kills tumor cells. Oh, okay. Actually, next slide is brachytherapy. Actually, brachytherapy is primarily used with prostate cancer, and this is such an unpleasant operation that I decided not to show that to you, because you're not the medical persons who are like accustomed to that kind of pictures. So I decided to show you the brachytherapy for lungs. But this is again primarily used for like prostate cancer and some others. So anyway, so here you see we get some implant here, which could stay for some time within the body and emits energy and kill some cancer cells or anything like here you see tumor and emits energy there locally, and yeah. So okay, so this was like the imaging. Now we're talking about therapies, right? So therapies like brachytherapy is one. Brachytherapy, when you have a localized tumor, there's some cavity around this tumor, so you can put some implant there within this cavity and very close to the tumor, and then the tumor gets radiated all the time. If there's no cavity around, there's some tough tumor, it's like some solid tumor within some organ. You can use radiotherapy or radiation therapy, or RT, whatever, external radiation therapy. It means that you have this kind of machine which would emit radiotherapy and in this particular case, like penetrating radiotherapy, which will go through your body and ideally concentrate energy within the tumor and kill the tumor cells. So if tumor is kind of localized, it is not it's not yet doesn't have yet metastasis, so it is kind of localized. It is one consolidated tumor. Then you can actually radiate that and try and kill that. So this was the therapy, the penetrating radiation, which means, for example, if you have, well, not you, okay, so if a patient has a tumor in his or her leg, then if you want to kill this tumor, you would make these gamma rays, which will go penetrate the whole of your leg, of the patient's leg, right? So like all the healthy tissues of your leg will get radiation dose. And this is obviously bad. So this will have tremendous side effects. And if it's not a leg, if it's some um, some part of your like body, then many other organs can get affected. Um, and what this actually does here, it's probably not the one. Yeah, but normally what you have is kind of circling source of emission, so that for example, you have your tumor here, and this is the leg, right? And it circulates around that, so that all the time the concentration of the dose is here, and then everything, all the other part of your body, part of the patient's body, get less doses. So that's why it's kind of rotating around the tumor and trying to keep and consolidate as much energy at the place of the tumor as possible. But then there's a better solution, potentially better. This is called proton therapy. Proton therapy is when you use not gamma rays, so you're not like doing the penetrating radiation, but then you put the so-called so like proton therapy, actually, yes. So it's proton therapy. It means that you kind of emitting a proton like an actual proton, right? So here you're emitting like photons, and they you see here. So they come. For example, this is the tumor inside your leg, inside the patient's leg, and it goes here. It has a lot of energy here when it starts. It has a lot of energy here, and it's still a healthy tissue, and then it has still large energy after it passes through the tumor. So you see here, so this is depth in centimeters of the body. This is this X-rays, the photons, they penetrate in the whole body and creating a lot of side effects. And proton therapy, when you emit protons, um, somehow it has very low energy at the beginning. Then there's a break peak when the energy goes really high, and you can calculate specifically how many centimeters. So you can calculate the energy which you have to give to this proton, so that it has a break peak at the tumor site. And this is where the most damage you make to a tissue, and you try to make this damage to tumor cells, right? Um, so, oh, just a second. So, and then as you see, after this break peak, the energy goes like up to like almost to zero, and this is called proton therapy. This is the next generation of radiotherapy. This is very, very expensive therapy. Uh, Actually, in order to build such a cyclotron, this kind of system, it is like whatever, like 50 million, whatever. So around 50 million US dollars you have to spend to actually build such a system. But the problem is that you have to have a building around that, which would cost you another like 20, 30 million, because it requires a lot of certification, a lot of safety involved. And this is a whole building just to make one operation, like really on the tumor. It is much more expensive compared to this first, like gamma knife. You probably heard gamma knife, which is kind of also trying to find a way how to lessen the dose for healthy tissue, but still it's a penetrating radiation. It's gamma knife. But this proton therapy is ideal for brain tumors in children, because it has much less side effects, and it attacks strictly the tumor site. So this is called proton therapy. Okay, so this is the therapy. So we have imaging, which is widely used. We have radiotherapy, which means you apply radiation. The way it actually works, actually I don't have the slide here, unfortunately. So the way radiotherapy works in brachytherapy, which is, you remember they put implants locally. So the way it works, you have this emission which disrupts the DNA. And once you disrupt the DNA of a cell, it launches the processes within itself of killing itself, right? So it's called apoptosis. So, so this whole story is about really stimulating apoptosis of cells, of tumor cells, um, using radiation and disrupting the DNA of the cell. This is so we're kind of going back to the DNA and everything we already hopefully learned. So now we're kind of going back. So you disrupt the DNA, and at some point the dose is so high that DNA cannot re- recombine by itself, and then the process called apoptosis kicks in, and the cell kills itself. Okay, so this is all for radiotherapy. Okay, so this imaging, there are isotopes. Normally, these isotopes are combined with pharma molecules, which are being more absorbed by a specific organ, so that you can actually target this isotope, radioisotope, to specific organ or like specific tumor site, if it's to have the image of that, or potentially not only diagnose but also uh, uh, kill the tumor cells. Okay, that's it today for the nuclear medicine. Hopefully it's helpful. And now, again, it's not in the trend right now. It's actually quite efficient in some tumors. It works. It is unfortunately has high cost of production potentially, a lot of logistics, certifications, everything. But if somebody is cured from cancer with that, of course this will be used, and insurance and the state would pay for that. Okay. Actually, the total market for the radiotherapy is around 5 billion, so it's not a large market. Still, the growth is expected to be 9%, which is fine. And now we're switching to a completely different topic, to our next topic today, digital health. We already talked about digital health a bit, about the applications of the digital. We talked about AI drug discovery. Hopefully you remember that. And we talked about omics, like multi-omics. So now, today, we'll be primarily talking about telemedicine, about digital therapeutics, and a bit of process automation, but probably less. So, okay, so firstly, we'll start with the term which was coined by Leroy Hood. Well, he's kind of famous guy, but he made a foundation of 4P medicine. And 4P medicine is kind of a term which is used everywhere. People are also already saying like 5P medicine, 6P, 7P, kind of adding more P's to this, whatever, to this term. But you have to know the 4P medicine, what it is, and I will, just briefly touch base that this 4P medicine means predictive, personalized, preventive, and participatory. And we'll go through each term right now so that you kind of understand each word correctly. Generally speaking, this whole idea comes that we have this digital revolution, we have data, a lot of data, which we can use. We understand better the biology, and we want to have more patient-centric healthcare and everything. Okay, so first is predictive. Predictive means obviously that we are trying to predict the potential issues with for this particular person based on the genomes, based on the data we have, and we kind of see that there are specific risks in the organism, and trying to monitor these particular risks, like giving some additional procedures for the person, kind of trying to predict that. So yeah. Anyway, obviously the benefits are clear. If the disease is identified at early stages, they can be better treated. Anyway, okay. Then comes the preventive medicine. Preventive means that we are, the predictive. We monitoring the risks, very specific risk of this particular patient, but then we can find some early signs of the onset of the disease, and the disease is kind of, we can see some steps towards pathologic state, and at that point intervene and actually prevent the disease altogether. Um, so this is already kind of intervention as compared to the monitoring, which was predictive. So it was kind of monitoring. Here we have already some intervention to prevent the disease altogether. Okay, um, and then participative or participatory, the other term which has been used for that as well. Um, so this is the what does it mean, by the way? How do you think? Participatory. Yeah. So the patient, like before that, the relationships between the doctor and the patient was that the doctor prescribes the medicine and the patient has to do that. So that's it. There are no kind of discussions. You know, the doctor says you have to like eat that. You know, you have to do the exercises. You do that. But now everybody becomes like looking into the internet and looking for another doctor. I mean, another doctor like Google. The doctor is Google. Um, and initial reaction of doctors was, of course, very negative about that. But currently, uh, yes, the medicine gets more participatory, which means that you are discussing the diagnosis, the risks involved, whether you can change your behavior to prevent the disease. So, and then the treatment, there are many choices of treatment, and each treatment has benefits and risks involved, and everything, the doctor has to discuss all of that, disclose all of that, explain what is the diagnosis, what does it mean, and everything. Before that, you know, sometimes you won't even know your diagnosis. You just go there, you have some pills prescribed, you do that, you know, you kind of, you stay in the dark. Now it changed. Now you have all of these discussions, a kind of more trust, hopefully, between the doctor and patient, um, and and yes, so the patients will comply, will provide data, you know, so they're kind of participating in their treatment. So this is very, very actually new. And then, of course, personalized. Also, a very new thing is that initially you would have like one-size-fits-all kind of approach. You have kind of some symptoms. Here is the pill, and that's it. So, and then you probably treat your symptoms, not the actual problem. Now, you know, we are all trying to connect the dots, find the whatever. Like you remember this multi-omics thing. You look at genome, some other tests, and then combine all of that and think that this may be like sounds like this. Let's test this pill. If it doesn't work, we'll find another pill specifically for your situation. You have many more pills. You have pills which work in very narrow cases, which was previously all the drugs had to be blockbuster drugs, and by blockbuster drug, for your information, means what? You know what blockbuster drug means? It means sales over 1 billion. So all the big pharma players, they were focused only on the diseases and only on the drugs which could make over 1 billion. So like all the blockbuster drugs. Currently, you have smaller drugs, but they are sometimes small in terms of like groups of patients, no longer kind of all patients, but groups of patients. But for them, you not only have the drug, you also have a specific test. And you take in the test, it's called companion diagnostics. So you take this test, it shows that yes, that this particular patient would definitely benefit from this particular drug. And previously, we would give a typical drug, and you know that there are some symptoms. You don't know the diagnosis, but there are some symptoms, and you're given the drug, which may actually work in 30% of cases. And this was fine. But then if it doesn't work, you give another drug, whatever. So here, um, in this new paradigm, you would actually make first the companion diagnostics and make sure, like 100% essentially, that this particular patient will benefit from this particular drug. In 99% or like over 90%, not 30%, but many more percentage points, like 90%, 95%, this particular patient will benefit from this particular drug. And then, because of that, because of this efficacy of the drugs, because they are now like very personalized, they're very and they are really uh, very efficacious for this particular group of patients, you may get this drug reimbursed for much higher price. Just to give you like sense of how it works, for example, you have like a patient, and you have a drug which would cost say 50,000 per course, 50,000 per course, and then only 30% will benefit from this drug. And everybody knows it's 30%. There are no better drugs, so people are using this drug, and it helps only 30% of patients, and okay, cures 30% of patients, right? So then, if so, one cure costs not 50,000, but costs 50,000 divided by 30%. It means that one cure costs 150,000 to the healthcare system. And then the 70% who are not cured, they will go to some other procedures like radiotherapy, not like pills already. And this could be the case that with radiotherapy is very expensive or anything, or they will stay at the hospital for 2 years, for example. This is extremely expensive. So if you find a drug which will test the patient and know that this patient, because of this test result, would benefit in 95%, 99%, and then you can pay for this drug 100,000, twice the price of 50,000, because this 50,000, the cure would cost 150, right? And then the 70% of the patients who would not benefit from the previous drug would go and will stay in the hospital. And you calculate all of that, and you suddenly realize that paying 100,000 for a drug which will act in like almost 100%, this is much cheaper for you, than paying for this kind of cheap drug which will work only in 30% of patient population. So this is why, in the end, you have a smaller patient groups, like smaller numbers of patients, but you have higher reimbursement rates. So for the big pharma players, you still get your 1 billion anyway, even if it's now not like distributed as aspirin or any other drug. So now that even it's tailored drug, personalized for a specific group of patients, you still get high reimbursement for each dose, for each course, and it's efficient both for the healthcare system and for the big pharma player. Okay, so this is so this is exactly the summary: predictive, preventive, participatory. Actually, I saw primarily participatory, but participative is also fine, and personalized. This is all the slides from the Roland Berger analysis. They made a 4P medicine kind of large report, and we looked into that, and this is really, they had done a great job for that. So the interesting thing is that what we see here is that they were like kind of different band camp, I would say, boot camps. So there was this kind of all these gadgets like didn't have any clinical value, like Fitbits and whatever consumer models. But they were very nice. They were like user-friendly, very nice. But they were completely useless for medical applications. And then there were like science-driven, like healthcare models, like some pacemakers, something invasive, something which you would only use if you're really very, very sick. And if you're very, very sick, you would not care about user experience or anything like that. At least that was the understanding. So that's why they were straightforward, and they were dealing only with treatments with some really kind of real like sickness. So, and now it's kind of blurring, and it's getting back so here you're getting better like data, like cholesterol meter, like some other like things, like some therapies. So they are more kind of like for monitoring, for prevention. All of these are being used, but they are now more and more kind of have medical grade information in them and collecting medical grade information. And these ones coming from healthcare side, no, actually from sick care side actually, they are becoming more and more user driven and like patient centric and more helpful and nicer in terms of user experience. So now it's kind of here, maybe here, the most value could be created. So if you're creating a startup, try and think if you're doing a medical device or monitoring or anything, you should look into that space where they will combine in the end, where you have this medical grade information, medical grade like medical quality decision, and then there's a user like experience friendly, and yes, and it's yeah, and in case of like some difficult cases, it connects to a doctor, and then some procedure goes on and whatever. So here on the sick care side, but you can do something really interesting here in the middle. Yeah. So this is what's happening. This is a major trend which we're seeing. And Ernst & Young, the video which you've seen, they created this nice chart showing that we will be all monitored everywhere. We will be monitored personally, like we have some personal devices, like fitness trackers, connected clothing. Connected clothing, by the way, here, this is showing the time to this. So they're expecting that relatively in the short to mid-term, we'll have connected clothing, smart clothing, which will monitor our health. And we actually have a startup for that already. These yellow ones are like kind of ingestible or embedded. The dark gray is those which are wearable devices, and the light gray is kind of environmental sensors, staying at home, whatever. So you see that you will be connected everywhere. You will be at home connected. There will be, some sensor-enabled pills which you will swallow inside, but the house will understand, the home will understand that you are at home, and it will monitor your health. You saw this indicators in the movie, right? So that you see that something is changing in your bloodstream or anywhere, and of course you will be monitored in the hospital. You will have virtual assistants. You will have all these Internet of Things, connected appliances. Potentially, these ones are like the tattoos, the nanobots, and of course, cyborg cells. Okay, so so whatever, it all kind of sounds science fiction, but this will actually happen potentially with just a few years, 5-10 years, we'll see all of that. And Motorica, the guy which we've seen, right? So he's already doing some of these advancements in actual products. So he's doing research for now, but this will all be transformed into actual products very soon, very soon. So we'll see that. Yeah. So anyway, so with this we'll get more data. I like this chart, by the way. So this actually shows that the personalized medicine approach, that initially they were curable diseases this at the bottom, and not curable. And then these curable, they were like large drugs, like multi-billion drugs, which would be applied and help manage a chronic disease or cure like some curable disease. But then the present is that we have a lot of those large drugs which kind of transformed into smaller niches, smaller markets, and now kind of and then potentially going into personalized medicine, so like really per patient. And then some of those which were incurable may become actually kind of manageable, or potentially may transform into curable. So this is what is happening. Almost 50% of the drugs being approved nowadays, almost 50%, are being approved together with the companion diagnostics. So that this is already helpful to actually higher the chances of being approved. So like the FDA likes it, when the FDA, the regulator, likes it when you have a companion diagnostics and you show that there's a specific mechanism of action with this particular drug, and this action or this particular mechanism of action is could be tested, and you don't have hypothesis of mechanism of action, but you know very specifically what is the mechanism of action, what is happening at cellular level, at the molecular level, and in order to provide this medicine to those who will benefit, you have companion diagnostics. Okay, yeah, so there are like gadgets, a lot of data, a lot of M&A deals in the space of IT, like telemedicine, etc. So, and now the important difference between the telemedicine and digital therapeutics or digiceuticals. So telemedicine is what it is. It's medical services provided remotely. So, and people unfortunately are mixing that. They're mixing the whatever digital health. Digital health is kind of overarching term for everything which is digital in health. So it's called digital health. Within it, you have primarily two segments. You have these medical services or telemedicine, telehealth, whatever. So it means that some services are being provided remotely or provided based on whatever, like data, everything like that. And then you have digital therapeutics, and we'll talk about that later on. So like this will be our next topic. So currently we're talking about this telemedicine. So telemedicine, initially this was just kind of the way I call it, the Skype for doctors. So you kind of have a way to chat, and that's it. So you stay connected with your patient. It's amazing, it's great, but to me it doesn't add much value. So essentially that's just the way you communicate with the patient. And actually, because of lack of sensors, lack of ways you can, this telehealth will be less efficacious than medical service if the patient actually comes to clinic, where you can touch him, you can see, you can watch, you can probably interact in a much better way than online. So telehealth, in my view, of course, it has its own benefits, but it actually works only in some rural areas where you don't have access to medicine or to a doctor. A doctor is somewhere like hundreds of kilometers from you. Then of course it's very helpful to have a connection. But the pandemic actually moved this whole story from like 5% of services being provided online to almost over 40%. But now the funny thing is that it got back to 10% or less. So it was not sustainable, unfortunately. So there were of course those startups who were doing telehealth. They hope that this will stay forever. It's like almost half of the services will be done online, and people will get used to it. But no, people didn't get used to it. People still come to an office and have the normal visit. Yeah. Anyway, so this is telehealth. There are like many kind of pluses for that, but like many benefits of that. But it didn't work. Yeah. So there were specific IT applications in healthcare, and one of the interesting story was that the initial applications were trying to focus on this major unmet need, to lower down the readmissions of the clinics of the patients. So patients get some treatment, get some prescription for pills, whatever, and then they get to the hospital back in just 5 days, for example. And this is very costly for the healthcare system. And then the state in the U.S. primarily, but also in some European countries, they made fines, and they put some additional charges on clinics if the person gets if there's a readmission of a patient within a certain period of time. It means if like within 5 days the patient gets back, it means that there was some issue with the treatment, something was wrong. Probably the patient should have stayed at the hospital for another couple of days to be treated appropriately, and then the patient will not come again. So this readmission became really actual economic burden. So there were specific charges on the hospitals if there's a readmission of patients. So there were a lot of startups to trying to evaluate chances of a patient being readmitted and helping the clinics actually save money on like really providing better care to the patients. Yeah, so this was the unmet needs, but there are actually a lot of projects like that already. Um, some of them, we were reviewing, and they were sold. Anyway, yeah, and then of course there are many other unmet needs, which are probably less important, as you see. But telehealth, of course, have its benefits. They're all very clear, but in the end, unfortunately, it didn't work. So people still want to visit the doctor personally and do that. So anyway, the expected growth rates are very high for telehealth. So if you were thinking of doing a telehealth startup, you have to think how you differentiate yourself and how you protect something you create. So either through either through ownership of data. So if you own the data, you can build something out of it. So you have to have some exclusivity. If there's no exclusivity, what you're doing, you're just doing another Skype for doctors. And there are so many projects like that because the barriers for entry were quite low at some point. So you should think it over. But anyway, if you do this smart, you can actually um, benefit from the trend of growing like up to 40% a year, which is kind of whatever they estimate from May 2020, which is obviously the time of pandemic. So maybe it's already wrong and should be revisited. There are some great players in the space, and there are some some acquisitions. The more acquisitions were like in the alternative care. Um, Actually, initially, big pharma players didn't like that. This was unclear how this would work. But in 2015, FDA provided guidance for digital therapeutics. And now we'll be talking about digital therapeutics, so it's kind of very much different story. So they provided the guidance that in case a digital therapeutics, which means just an app, a computer app, like could be a mobile app or desktop app, if you manage to make a clinical trial and show that a mobile application is better for the treatment as compared to the pills, right? So you compare just an application which tells you what to do. So it's a behavioral medicine. You change your behavior, and if changing your behavior based on the mobile application is more efficacious than an actual pill, which is currently available in the market, then you can get reimbursement for your application, right? So do you get that? So for example, so we'll go through that. So essentially, you can get reimbursed as if it were a pill. But a pill still has to be produced. And an application is just, it has zero cost of production. So it's a matter of how many downloads would it have. But it doesn't. You don't have to produce another app, right? So, but you have to do R&D probably. But still, yeah. By the way, one of the best projects of digital therapeutics is this peer therapeutics. But we'll talk about it in a more detail later. So they were like digital pills to treat chronic diseases. These are called digiceuticals, digital pills. What else? Behavioral medicine. digital therapeutics, whatever. So this is all kind of the names for the same thing. It means that this is just an app which drives your the right behavior on your end. So so it may say something. So in Peer Therapeutics, as you see, is number one here. It went public. It raised 400 million. It's a large public offering, very large public offering. And they were like Achille Interactive Labs. We'll show it later. So these are like the companies which were quite successful and went public last year. Okay, so now I'll show you the like so that you understand what actually how it works. So this is the data for the peer therapeutics. Peer therapeutics. So here, Peer Therapeutics created this product called Reset. Reset, which generally treats substance use disorder, which could be anything: marijuana, heroin, opioids, anything, or alcohol, anything. So normally, the way it works, you would, for example, like you are like drinking too much alcohol. So you would come to a doctor, and the doctor would tell you that you should not drink that much alcohol, right? So you say, yes, I would never do this again, right? And then, of course, over 70%, like 80% or more actually, within a year, they will be readmitted for the same problem, right? So, of course, they will have this abuse, and because it's actually a disease, right? So it's not just, just some behavior. Anyway, in case you would have a mobile application that will monitor your physical activities, monitor your kind of mood state. Of course, you have to put this in. You have to say that, well, I'm doing this and that, the way I sleep, what I eat, and everything. And this will give you recommendations, and will give you some awards, kind of digital awards, for doing the right thing. All of a sudden, it would be less than 50% of such patients coming back to the hospital within a year. It means that you actually are saving a lot of money for the healthcare system, because doctor's time is some of the most expensive thing within the healthcare system. So if you show that it's statistically significant, that using your application you manage to save 10 billion to the healthcare system of the US, because now this like people with drug abuse, with substance use disorder, are not coming back within a year, and you saving 10 billion, then this application would not be like a $2 application within App Store. This could be $100 per month subscription app, which would be paid by the state or by insurance. So you can get like whatever, $1,200 per year for these patients, which are kind of chronically ill anyway. So you would get like not $2 once and that's it. And this $100 per month would not be paid by the patient. This would be paid by the system. So this is truly amazing. And with that, some of the largest diseases, some of the diseases which we unfortunately cannot treat so far, could be treated by changing the behavior. For example, of course, so this drug abuse, so substance use disorder. What else? The hypertension, migraines, potential, what less probably, schizophrenia, and of course obesity. So these are such diseases which unfortunately do not have a pill for a cure. And if you change your behavior, if you have the right diet, the right physical exercise, and good sleep, you can actually potentially manage this disease and would not have any major issues. The other example is here, the Achille Interactive company. They are creating games, real games. And you see this is not like really good graphics here. But anyway, they're creating games. And when playing, you can actually have some good scores with ADHD. You know what ADHD means, right? So this is kind of for the primarily for children. In yeah, yes, it's here. Yes, so it's attention deficiency and hyperactivity syndrome, ADHD. So this is the again, this is not treated properly by pills, but the games, which are strictly like with regime. So you kind of you play for 1 hour every day. You know there are specific timeline, whatever. So you play, and the interesting part of that you cannot download this game in the App Store. This is called prescription app. You need to have a prescription to download this app from App Store. So, and this became possible because of FDA guidance for digital therapeutics. So, yeah, so with that, actually finalizing all our topics, and I want to go back and go through some of the major slides which we had during this course. I'm doing this course for the first time, and actually this was my dream course. I'm glad to see so many people here who really like the course. And yeah, so just to finalize, I want to do the recap of the whole module, everything which we hopefully learned from that. So this is the overall map of all the technologies which are currently available for treatment. There are many new modalities. Modalities, so you understand, it's a new way, how like a new kind of paradigm of disease treatment. And we went through almost all of the potential modalities, and of course all the trendiest modalities. So this you hopefully remember this slide. It shows that we start with genotype. We can identify specific risks. We look through all other like data which we have on the person, and then it's called phenotype. Phenotype means specifically what is being expressed within the genome, and this is called phenotype. And we understand then the person's phenotype. We see all the symptoms, everything, and then we have this system biology. And through behaviors of the person, we can actually change the disease state to health state. And then, of course, it's important to take into account social, behavioral system, and the settings, ecology, and everything in order to identify treatments, best intervention in this particular situation. Hopefully now you remember what is pharmaceuticals and what is biotechnology, right? So pharmaceuticals is small molecules, and then everything which is kind of produced, potentially being produced by the body, and is constructed based on amino acids. This is all biotechnology. You have peptides, like here, probably here would be peptides. Peptides are almost small molecules, but they are based on amino acids. That's why it's already biotechnology. And then, of course, the insulin, it's kind of an antibody is kind of a large molecule, as you see. Okay, so hopefully you understand that. We went firstly, hopefully you remember this movie, Catacomb. We went through the gene reading and gene editing. Hopefully now you're like molecular biologists by almost. You know that we have DNAs, and in DNA we have genes which are coded, and they are like files within a file system. There are 20,000 genes, and then there's a specific code to say that the gene begins here. So you have this theta box, etc. So, and then it starts the transcription of the gene into RNA, which is kind of like RAM in our memory. This is hard drive. This is RAM, and this gene is being transcribed into RNA. Each 3 letters of RNA are coding specific amino acid. You have this polymers of amino acids, and this chain automatically, based on chemistry, based on physics, gets into this state of protein, and like this firstly, and then connects with the others and becomes like a system of proteins working together. And this is the way actually our body works, with proteins signaling to different organs what is happening within the body, and then like producing and curing the disease. We talked about multiomics, right? So we read all the data inside the human, including genome, but also transcriptomics, which is all the RNAs, proteomics, which is all the proteins, metabolomics, all the metabolites, and then microbiome, all the microbes within the body, and many other things here. So everything we read, and if we find the kind of interaction between all of this data, we can apply multiomics and provide personalized treatment. Well, we talked about DNA storage, to keep all of this data, and it seems inevitable that we'll be using DNA for that. This is a major trend here. Then we talked about creating new creatures from scratch, and I showed to you this nice movie of AAS plus F art team. Here you see like synthesized life. So we talked about living therapies. Hopefully you remember what is synthetic biology. So you write in life. With this, you can create code, put it into hardware, into specific cells or some viruses, deliver this code to the human body, and within a human body, they will act, like these T cells would kill all the tumor cells or anything. This code, which you put through virus, can be embedded into your code, etc. So there are like different ways. And you remember the synthetic biology, the way you can actually create logic gates within biology. Then we talked about microbiome, how it works. Again, it's living therapies. You take bacteria and bring this to like a disease state microbiome, and hopefully these bacteria can change the microbiome to a healthy state, which will hopefully have like cause the organ work appropriately. Hopefully, this actually it's already there is data proving that this actually works. Then we talked about AI, about cyborgs, quantum computing, and everything. And I showed to you Ghost in the Shell, which was a great movie. I really have you seen it? Anime. Okay, yeah, anime is better. Okay, haven't seen anime. I have to see it. Yes, this kind of more classical. We talked about the AI drug discovery paradigm, but because now hopefully we'll not have to do this like for 10 years. Hopefully we can discover drugs much faster. And we talked about not discovering drugs, but designing drugs from scratch, not trying to find something within human, immune repertoire, but just designing new proteins or new antibodies which will kind of attack and some missions. We talked about quantum computers, which will hopefully help us to simulate the quantum mechanics of molecules, and then obviously they will hopefully the quantum computers will help us to teach AI much more efficient, and this will change the whole paradigm of AI drug discovery potentially. So we shall see if it happens. May happen within 7 years. So we'll have a lot of new molecules, not molecules which we found in the plants or in the human being, but like really new molecules. We talked about implants, talked about neurotechnologies, invasive, non-invasive, brain and brain-computer interfaces. That's kind of even had a talk with Ilya Chekh, who showed us some of his research. That's really amazing. And finally, today we talked about digital therapeutics. We talked about imaging using radioisotopes in kind of the paradigm that we can monitor everything and can make this 4P medicine a reality, and probably like 5P medicine, 7P medicine, etc. Yeah, that's all, folks. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and this is really, as I told you, this is the toughest topic, life sciences. If you're just approaching that, we just scratched the surface, as you saw. But hopefully you have now an overview of what is actually possible in life sciences. And there are a lot of new modalities which are like happening right now. Like 5 years ago, we didn't have all of that. And what will happen in the next 5 years, that's kind of up to you. Hopefully, you would make the things happening. You will listen to all of these trends. You will think what you can do within this trend, with which probably you have some personal issue with that. You have wherever you have some relatives, you have something like something which really connects to you, and try to find a cure for that using all of these trends as like as a tools. You have to have this overview of tools so that you're not applying just one hammer which you found, but you have all the potential instruments in your repertoire, in your minds, and try to find the best solution for the disease, for some problem, which really connects with you. Thank you so much. Okay. If you have any questions, yes, please. Oh, one question, good. Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
it,
yeah,
yes,
it works. Yeah, you've mentioned some examples of digital therapeutics,
right.
uh, but maybe I just didn't hear it. Some examples of telemedicine.
Yeah, telemedicine is a well, primarily telehealth was like Skype for doctors, right? So you just kind of connect with the patient, um, uh, but it gets more and more sophisticated. So, and the whole trend is that you get more and more procedures which could be done at home, and with this data, like before, you didn't have this data. Now you have the medical grade data at home, which you can submit to a doctor. And now this telemedicine may actually make sense, because now you don't have to go to the doctor to provide this data. Now you have medical grade data at home. Yeah. So telehealth would be more and more kind of advancing, and the an example which I liked was the company called Right Care. What they did, they kind of calculated the chance of the patient being readmitted. That's the project which I explained. This was an unmet need, and they were based on like on the electronic medical records of this particular patient, based on the based on the history of treatments of other patients. They could make an algorithm which would show the probability of this particular patient getting back within 7 days. And for clinics, it's very important that the patient doesn't get readmitted, yeah, because then they have to like they are charged for that. Yeah, so this was called Right. I think this is a great example of telehealth, or digital health, but yeah. Otherwise, yes. Otherwise, I think that within our program, ideally you would create products, not services.
Mhm,
And digital therapeutics is a product. Yes, it's not a service.
mhm. Okay, and thank you. And you probably know the company Best Doctor.
Yes.
Yeah. So is it a telemedicine?
Yes, telemedicine. Yes.
Okay, okay. And one more question. You've mentioned the startup connected with clothes, which diagnose you, or something like that.
Yeah. Well, this is the well, I just meant the our alumni who is creating this UX Tex, UX driven textile company called UX Tex. And they're creating clothes based on printed electronics. Currently, it's just warming up, but they will have all the sensors inside these clothes, and potentially, my kind of dream is that they will replace the phone, so that you can just take your clothes and do like pull them up, pull them down. You can do some gestures on the clothes, and interact. You can answer a call here and everything on your clothes. I think could be a great business, but the next stage would be that they will monitor your health. Because this is the clothes, and they can monitor your excessive heats. They can monitor the potentially microelements. Um, in your sweat. And this could be firstly applied to like sportsmen, but then potential to everybody who would like to monitor their health. So this could be like a tremendous opportunity, multi-billion opportunity, if they manage to do so. So they're kind of trying to build some startup around that.
Thank you.
You can try and join. If I think that they may be lacking some person who could help them with the medical side of the business. So yeah, if somebody here like have some medical background, a doctor, yeah, you're mostly welcome. Okay, do we have any more questions? Okay. Okay, so thank you so much. That was very pleasant. This is our last lecture. Hopefully, when I went through like recap and showed you many slides, you kind of feel, yeah, oh, this was my favorite slide. Oh, this slide was also perfect. This is also great. Great movie, great videos, and hopefully enjoyed all the time. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye-bye.